It's like we know what we're doing, but without supervision, nobody could really ever tell.
You said a mouthful there, pal.
This episode is brought to you by Rexair Professional Pilot Academy of Sebring, Florida. They've got everything a flight student needs to be successful. So give them a call, 309-397-6191, or drop them a line, info@rexair.net. Pat Brown, this is shocking to me, but the government, through the Department of Transportation, comes out with an enormous, voluminous new set of rules that we've talked about, MOSAIC. And astoundingly, I'm glad you're sitting down for this, there's confusion on some of these points. Can you believe it?
Oh, say it ain't so.
Even us, I gotta say, we did a very good MOSAIC video. Thank you so much to all of you who commented. That was fantastic. And much of this video is because of your comments on that video. But even we got a couple things a little wonky, and it's worth clearing the air. So let me start with this. There was huge concern, and understandably, that there are two different stall speeds and configurations listed in MOSAIC. One is 59 knots clean.
Yeah.
One is 61 knots dirty. And
Yeah.
people are just all confused about that, as were we initially. What's your take on why? Let's just separate them. Why 59 knots clean? Why is that calibrated airspeed a specific stall speed for MOSAIC?
Yeah. Well, I was actually a bit confused as to why this happened too, but thanks to some really astute observations by some of the commenters, and thank you for that. And kind of the clarity of time and have a chance to kind of, I guess, kind of think this through. The FAA actually really did a very smart thing. And I know folks, sometimes look askance at the FAA and say, why in the world did they do that? But in this particular case, what they've done is they've actually divorced the idea of a sport pilot and a sport pilot's privileges from aircraft that can be designated, or I should say, designed and produced under light sport aircraft rules. So a sport pilot, and I think we should make sure that we're using proper terminology here. A sport pilot, not a light sport pilot, but a sport pilot can now fly an airplane that has a clean calibrated airspeed, CAS, stall speed of 59 knots or less, with fixed pitch, fixed gear, constant speed prop, retractable landing gear, those last two things with the appropriate training and endorsements. But what the FAA has done is they've expanded the definition of light sport aircraft, not to be confused with sport pilots, but light sport aircraft, which can be certified under ASTM standards. And those new ASTM standards now are 61 knots dirty, and they've taken away the weight. And the idea there was to limit the weight by virtue of the stall speed. And what that's going to really mean is that it's probably around 3,000 pounds, give or take, but there's nothing that specifically says 3,000 pounds. So it's two different things. We have our sport pilot rules and the privileges that a sport pilot can exercise, and then airplanes that are going to be certificated under ASTM standards at the sport pilot light sport level, the light sport aircraft level or classification of 61 knots dirty, 61 knots dirty. See, still have to start calibrating my thinking there.
It's going to take a minute, but I am glad. You're absolutely right. They have completely separated sport pilot from light sport aircraft. They are different things. And just because it's a light sport aircraft does not mean a sport pilot can fly it. There is now going to be a small little wedge of aircraft that are little higher performance than a sport pilot can qualify for. And, that fits right into the whole initial concept of sport pilot was a lower cost way to get into aviation.
Right.
And just as you and I started as privates, then added instrument, then added multi-engine, then added commercial, same kind of concept. Now, We
So it's
also said, I'm sorry, go
but,
ahead.
but it's also important to notice or to note that if you, as we talked about in the last video, if you, Jamie, you have a commercial pilot certificate, if you decide at some point, I'm just going to fly under light sport rules, I'm going to use a driver's license medical, fly under light sport rules, even with your commercial pilot certificates, you are limited to 59 knots,
59
59
knots. Yep.
knots calibrated.
Absolutely. You're all in or you're all out. You can't kind of one foot in each camp. You got to pick
Correct.
one.
Correct.
Now,
Now,
we did talk about an October date of 2026 when we might see those new designs with the 61 knots dirty stall speed come out.
correct.
And that was incorrect too. And that's just a bookkeeping error, I'll say, about when the rule was published and the 90 days after that. Would you like to illuminate that little glitch?
Yeah, so the rule was announced on November the 22nd, 2025. It was published in the Federal Register on November 24th of 2025. And in the Federal Register, it talks about the new standards, the new ASTM standards, the 61 knot CAS, coming into effect 1 year after the publication date of the rule, which is November 24th of 2025, which means November 24th of 2026 is when airplanes that are designed and built under the new 61 knot clean, the 61 knot dirty airspeed take effect. We said October 22nd because frankly, we just made a mistake.
Well, and this is actually kind of important, and not so much the date. That's just a month one way or the other. But the whole point of being able to design and build something that qualifies as a light sport aircraft means you're no longer going under the normal certification process. You're using the ASTM standard, which currently exists for light sport aircraft, which could conceivably lower the cost of aircraft production and purchase and even maintenance, because I don't have to go through the type certificate data sheet anymore. I can do a whole bunch of things that I couldn't do before. This gets a little esoteric because is it a factory built aircraft? Is it a home built aircraft? So is it experimental or is it, factory built? RV12, the Vans RV12 is a very good example of this under the current system. You can build it yourself and it has certain uses, or you can buy it from the factory and you can put it to work in a flight school. You can actually use it in that realm. So there's a lot that's going to happen, and it's all going to be, all these manufacturers and designers are going to be looking at November of 2026 as we could have a whole new world there.
Yeah. So here's the one thing you have to remember though, when you're talking about an aircraft that was certificated under the light sport rules, if it's a factory built airplane, you can't really make any modifications to that airplane without getting a letter of authorization from the factory. Now, if you build it yourself, then all bets are off. You can do whatever you want to do and go, knock yourself out. But so you have to be careful whether we're talking about an E-LSA or an S-LSA.
I don't think MOSAIC addresses that directly because it was unnecessary. That's a pre-existing thing.
Yeah,
but
that doesn't change.
The experimental LSA or the E-LSA built in the factory, they have a lot more latitude than they used to. And even getting that documentation from the manufacturer that I'd like to make this modification may be a whole lot easier than, I need somebody to invest millions of dollars to come up with a supplemental type certificate so I can put auto fuel in my airplane. All right. There was another one, Pat, and I got very excited as a former AirCam owner, and I may never shut up about that because it is a phenomenal airplane. But we got very excited because MOSAIC specifically says multi-engine will now be classified as, or can be classified as light sport aircraft. But that does not mean a light sport aircraft, or I'm sorry, a sport pilot can fly a traditional twin engine airplane with a stall speed below 59 knots clean. Yeah. No, the traditional twin is off the table. What are the multi-engine aircraft they're talking about?
VTOLs, eVTOLs. Yeah, the ones with the so-called simplified flight controls. That's the reason that they went to that, and that was one I just flat out got wrong. I misread it.
Oh, and it's easy to, because that's a whole new technology. We've seen multi-engine for our entire careers, and we knew what that meant.
Right.
Now multi-engine means an entirely different thing.
Yeah.
And I have not flown one of those yet, but I have been right up next to a few. Those things are pretty cool. And a
Yeah.
lot of airports here in Florida are already working on having a VTOL pad, whatever they're calling it. I mean,
Yeah.
they're preparing for that. So
A manned drone.
now there is another issue because the sport pilot, as long as you're flying a light sport aircraft with a stall speed under 59 knots, clean, calibrated airspeed, you can do all sorts of things you couldn't do before, including fly at night, provided you have training and carry a medical.
Correct.
What about flying IFR? Can a sport pilot fly IFR now? Can they fly in the system?
Well, let me make one minor correction, Jamie. You said under 59 knots. It is 59 knots or less.
Yes,
So we want, again, we try, words are important, Jamie. Words are
they are.
important.
I consider myself admonished appropriately. I thank you.
That's all right. The whips and chains will come out later. So there had been some confusion and some questions about IFR as a sport pilot, and the answer is that is absolutely off the table. The regs very specifically say in the IFR reg that you have to have a private pilot certificate or better to fly IFR. So I'm not sure where that misconception came into being, but IFR is off the table for someone flying under sport pilot rules. So let me kind of include, you Jamie, you have, you've decided that you're going to start flying as a sport pilot with a driver's license medical, but you have an instrument rating. Maybe you're even current and proficient, but you're deciding to fly under sport pilot rules. And maybe you have an LSA that is certified to fly in instrument conditions, because they do exist. The answer is no, you cannot do that. So that's off the table. Night flight, absolutely, with proper training and the proper endorsement. If you're a sport pilot, if you're a commercial pilot like you are and decided you want to fly under light sport rules, under sport pilot rules, then no additional training required. No additional training is required for you because you've already done that. So no endorsements.
I was sitting with an airline pilot the other day for one of the majors, very experienced guy, flew P3 Orions in the Navy. Now he flies for a major. And we were talking about MOSAIC, and he was just amazed. He had no idea. No offense, many airline pilots fly in a different thing. They're Part 121 carriers.
Yeah.
They're not paying attention to this. But the whole landscape of general aviation is changing because of this, including one thing that I can completely understand why people got this wrong. Sport pilots are allowed to carry one passenger.
Correct.
But they can have multiple seats. And the
Correct.
number of seats is a sticking point. Would you like to touch on that with your enormous brain?
It's hard to keep it contained sometimes. Yes. There were several comments in the comment section of the original video that talked about 6-seat airplanes. No. You cannot fly a 6-seat airplane with one passenger. You cannot fly a 6-seat airplane that has 2 seats taken out to make it a 4-seat airplane and carry one passenger. It is a 4-place airplane. So a Cessna 172, a 182, an Archer, a Warrior, any type of perhaps a Diamond, depending on the stall speeds and so on and so forth. So as a sport pilot, you're limited to one passenger, 4 seats maximum. There's 4 showing in the frame right there. 4 seats maximum. You can't take out 2 seats out of a 206 or a Cherokee 6 or something like that and say, "Oh, I'm good." No, you're not.
So if we can synopsize, which we're fond of doing, by Christmas this year, you're going to be able, as a sport pilot with driver's license medical, to fly aircraft with a calibrated, clean stall speed of 59 knots or less. By the way, get some training on that, because the jump from 100 horsepower to 230 horsepower is substantial. It's not something you want to just wing it, if you'll pardon the pun. Next year, Sun and Fun and AirVenture may be the most exciting in years, because that will be coming up on that November 24th, 2026 date. There may be manufacturers that are showing off new designs, and look what we've got on the table. You want to watch for this. Multi-engine is available for light sport pilot in terms of eVTOLs and VTOLs, not in traditional twin engine aircraft. IFR, the airplane, the light sport aircraft, may be capable of instrument flight, but the sport pilot may not do instrument flight in it. The private or commercial or ATP could, provided they have a medical and the airplane is equipped for that. And no more than 4 seats, 1 passenger if you're a sport pilot. Have I pretty much covered it, Pat?
Up to 250 knots.
There's always something else. Folks, I can't thank you enough. This really is an exciting change, this MOSAIC rule. We'll see things kind of segueing in over the next few months, but thank you so much from Pat and myself, deep in our hearts, for all those comments, all those great questions. This is such a big change. There's no reason we should all understand it on day one, but we can all work together to really get the most out of MOSAIC and what it offers all of us throughout general aviation. Pat, would you like to leave any parting words to the greatest aviation podcast audience on the planet?
Oh man, I second that one. Well, only this, we are kind of learning with everybody else as we find out perhaps some additional little morsels of information that might be of interest. We'll certainly jump on a meeting and record something and get it out there as quickly as we can. But sincerely, I want to echo Jamie's thanks to the several hundred comments that we got on the original video that actually sparked this one. So thank you so much. We really do listen, and we really do attempt to answer those people that take the time to write us. So thank you for that. And my friend, adios.
Bye now.